we've created a simplified version of the TextView class, which would be saved in the textview.java file. We simplified it so it'd be easier for you to understand what a class would look like. First, it starts with an access modifier. It's marked as public so that other things, like an activity, can use this TextView class. Then we have the word class. This indicates to Java that this is a class definition. Then we have the name of the class. The name of a class in Java starts with a capital letter and it's in camel case, so there's no spaces and a capitalized subsequent words. There's some other text here, but we'll look into that later. The important thing is we have an opening brace, and then at the bottom of the definition we have a closing brace. Now inside this TextView class, we have a bunch of variables here. Each of these represents a field in the text view. So we have a field for the text of the text view and a field for the text color of the text view. There are other fields as well, but remember this is the simplified version of the TextView class. We also have a variable to store a reference to the context of the application. You can read more about context in the instructor notes below, but it's basically a way to access information about the app. Like for example, you can access resources in the app using the context. And these are the methods of the text view. The setText method takes as input a text string. Then it updates the global variable mText to use this new value. Similarly, the setTextColor takes as input a new color, and it updates the internal state to have this new color value. There's also methods like getText and getTextColor, which return the internal text string or the internal text color. One more thing, you may have noticed that these global variables here all start with the lowercase m. M stands for member variable, and these are all member variables of this TextView class. Member variable is just another way to say field or the state of the TextView class. Here's a simplified ImageView class. You would find it in the imageview.java file. It starts with public class, and then ImageView is the name of the class, and then we have opening and closing braces. This makes up the state of the ImageView. Normally it would have more fields than this, but I just wanted to show you an example. This is an integer variable, and it's called mImageID, M for member variable. This stores the resource ID for the image that should be shown in this image view. Down here we have the constructor, which is used to construct a new image view object, and it takes as input a context, and then it initializes these variables. Then we have a method. It's called setImage, and it takes as input a resource ID for the new image that should be shown in this image view. Inside this method, we update the internal variable for image ID. Again, we created these simplified TextView and ImageView classes to help you understand the concept of classes. Now let's look at the real version of these classes inside the Android framework. To see the code for the Java classes in Android, you can install this Chrome extension. If you're not using the Chrome browser, you can see the instructor notes below for how to access these files. Okay. Once that Chrome extension is installed, then when I search for something like TextView Android and I go look at the reference documentation for this class, then there's going to be this extra link here that says View Source. This is really for advanced developers if you're curious about the code that is used to create this text view. This is a TextView Java file that was defined by someone on the Android team. As you can see, it's really long and complex, but it still has the main parts of a class. It starts with public, class, and then TextView, the name of the class, and then this is the opening brace, and the closing brace is all the way at the bottom here. At the top of the class, we see a bunch of fields here, and this makes up the state of the class. For example, we see that text color is a field. We also see that text is a field. And here's the constructor for TextView that takes as input a context. If I hit Command F or Control F if you're on Windows, then I can try to search for setText. And here's the setText method. This method is going to set the string value of the text view. And if I search for getText, then I also see this method returns the text that the text view is displaying. You get the idea, and you can browse through this on your own if you want. If I search for the ImageView documentation page, then I can click on View Source to view all the code for the ImageView class. The file says public class ImageView, and then these are the fields that make up the state of the ImageView, and then there's a bunch of methods at the bottom of the file. The code in this file is pretty complex as well, and it's also thousands of lines of code. The best part about object-oriented programming, though, is that you don't need to know about all these details. As a developer, you can use text view and image view in your app without knowing about all the gory details of what's going on inside of it.